The way that we handle our boundaries needs to be coming from our own agency. We cannot be setting boundaries with the intention to be controlling another person's behavior. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Transformations. Thank you so much for having patience with me. It has been a very long few weeks with moving. I'm very excited to be presenting some content coming up. I have some really cool things in the works. I've been working hard with the move, also trying to be attending to my studies, and I'm just purely exhausted. So I really appreciate you all for giving me the space to go through these transitions and not feel like I have to burn myself out getting content out to you guys. So thank you so much to everyone who watches my videos and reads my newsletters. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Today I'm going to try and keep it brief in the spirit of still adapting to my new space. As you can see, I am in a new place here. It is really lovely. Pretty soon I'm going to be giving a tour of this place, so keep an eye out for that video. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified when I make new videos so you can know when that comes out. But today I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about a post that I saw a friend share, and then I've seen a few other friends share since then. And it's on the topic of boundaries, and it's kind of gotten me thinking a lot about the discourse around boundaries, what boundaries are, kind of wanting to unpack this idea of what purposes that boundaries serve and how we can view them in our own lives in a way that's really healthy and dynamic and not rigid. This is a post from Instagram user Sylvie Kukasian, and they are a relationship coach. So they wrote this post and it says, "Sometimes boundaries can be used as a form of control or a way of maintaining the power position in a relationship." And the caption here says, "Sometimes boundaries can be used to prevent us from having to feel into our fears and our vulnerabilities. One of the core purposes of boundaries is self-protection. They protect us from harmful behavior. They help us define and separate our feelings, thoughts, and opinions from the feelings, thoughts, and opinions of others. They help us know what kinds of experiences we want to have and what kinds we want to keep out. They help us monitor how much intake we can tolerate, and they help us own our limits. Boundaries give us an important sense of control and agency over our lives, and we desperately need that. Where we can get into trouble with boundary setting is when we become rigid and inflexible with them. Certain boundaries can be harmful to our loved ones when we aren't willing to see the impact on them. Sometimes walls are disguised as boundaries. Sometimes boundaries are used to justify avoidant patterns and behaviors. Sometimes boundaries give us a false sense of power, especially if we have spent a lifetime feeling powerless. Sometimes boundaries are used in place of difficult conversations that we simply don't know how to have. It's more than okay to inquire about people's boundaries, even as we accept them. It's more than okay to make effort to gently understand someone's boundaries if we have a close relationship with them. We can't force people to remove or change boundaries that feel unhealthy to us. But we absolutely can collaboratively explore whether someone's boundaries might be expressed in a one-sided or disconnecting way. Healthy boundaries are meant to create more connections, even if the road to getting there isn't always comfortable. And healthy relationships will make space to explore and soothe the impact of disconnecting boundaries, even as we simultaneously honor them." Right off the bat, as soon as I read this, I had a flashback to a former self. I thought about myself before I really understood what boundaries were about. And I mean, honestly, I remember learning about boundaries when I was maybe, 20, 21, and I took a healthy relationships class. And in that class, the whole piece about boundaries, I think, kind of just went over my head. I didn't understand them at all. It really wasn't until I was pregnant in my mid-20s that I started to kind of develop more of an idea of what they were about. And I think I can kind of chart my progression with boundaries from a place where I was essentially trying to control my environment to gain a sense of stability, to a place where I thought that getting angry was what expressed the boundary, and that once I expressed, hey, I don't like that, I don't want that, then the person would listen to me and things would change. to a place where I began to kind of develop a sense that boundaries are actually more about the way that we make choices about how we are going to be in relationship with other people. And I think that there's something really natural about anger and boundaries, and that's the thing. When I look back, I can see so much more clearly is when I would get angry about a boundary crossing. I'm thinking about being in toxic relationships where repeated behaviors were happening over and over again, even when I would timidly at first say, hey, I really don't like this thing. And then over time, I would be gaslit and made to feel as if I was overreacting, that my feelings were inherently problematic, that I was just too insecure, and that, all kinds of stuff like that. Not being met with validation and care, not being met with like, oh, I see that, but this thing's really important to me, or, oh, I see that and thank you, I can work on that. No real like flexibility and negotiation, anything like that, just kind of like you're wrong for having those feelings. And over time, it makes sense in those kind of situations that they will build up and you're going to explode because, you're being told that this reaction that you have is wrong, when in fact, anger is a really natural reaction to having your boundary crossed. Anger is what arises when we aren't having our needs met and our boundaries are being crossed. So when I read this post, immediately I was thinking of my very early, like those really early stages of learning what boundaries are like, when I thought that a boundary could be expressed and it would be respected, when in reality a boundary needs to be backed up by consequences for it to mean anything at all. So for instance, someone says something rude or demeaning to me, someone, crosses some kind of boundary. And I get angry and upset and I tell them how hurt I am, well, then it just keeps on happening. So a consequence of something might be, okay, I see that when I told you this really vulnerable thing, you responded in this way that was really invalidating. So now I know not to tell you that kind of stuff in the future. You could even tell the person, hey, when you respond that way, it makes me feel unsafe to tell you these things in the future. So just so you know, if you want me to be sharing these sorts of things with you, this is what I need from you in the future. Do you think you can do that? In more extreme cases, of course, sometimes the consequence of a boundary being habitually crossed means that we need to take space from a person temporarily, sometimes even permanently. But the point being that boundaries are, the way that we handle our boundaries needs to be coming from our own agency. We cannot be setting boundaries with the intention to be controlling another person's behavior. Coming from the background I was talking about, I really appreciated this post for bringing this to light. I think there's this idea that we cannot question another person's boundaries. And, sometimes it's inappropriate to, absolutely, but sometimes it's appropriate to do so. It's okay to be curious and to ask questions. And if the person says, I don't want to talk about that, then they're telling you where they are. And in that situation, you have choices to make too. You can say, what does this tell me about this person and their ability to engage with me in a healthy, dynamic relationship? What does it tell me about where they're at in their growth right now? Or what does it tell me about maybe what they're even just going through? Because just because someone's behaving in a way that we think is, not healthy, doesn't necessarily mean that that's fundamentally who or where they are. It could be something as simple as having a bodily need going unmet that's making someone feel grumpy. Hello, I've been there 100%. Or it could just be someone's going through a really hard time and they don't have the capacity to engage at that level. And that's totally okay too. It's important to take that information though and make decisions with it yourself. Don't think that because someone had a boundary that you don't have any right to ask questions about it. You cannot force someone to push past their boundary. Don't try that. You can engage with someone and you can tell someone what you need. And that's the way that when we talk about relationships that are healthy and dynamic, that's the dynamic part. That's the part where someone says, this is my boundary, and you say, okay, but this is my need. How can we work these things out and meet? And how can I honor your boundary while meeting my need? How can we explore this further? Maybe my need can be met in a way that doesn't violate this boundary that you have, or maybe as we explore more, we see that the core of your boundary actually does not conflict with the core of my need. So healthy and dynamic relationships are going to have this back and forth kind of flow. It's not going to be, this is my boundary, end of story. And if it is, then maybe there's a big change that needs to happen in the relationship. I just think that's something that you need to be able to explore together or on your own with someone else that you trust. I have certainly seen people use boundaries in ways to shut down conversations, to avoid taking in really important feedback, and those are the kinds of things that show me something about where someone else is at and show me, okay, I can't engage with this person on this level. Now I know that. Maybe in the future they will be more able to receive that feedback, and maybe we'll be able to meet somewhere on this issue, but right now they are showing me where they are. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified. Consider becoming a patron. I have tiers as low as $1 a month, and my patrons are really who allow me to create this content sustainably. So thank you so much to my patrons. Thank you for considering becoming one yourself. Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts about this topic. Have there ever been times when you have set a boundary and the intention behind it was more to control or to avoid rather than to really express what your limits are? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear if you've ever been in a situation where someone set a boundary with you that you felt was kind of to put up a wall and keep you from being able to have a dynamic conversation with them. I would love to hear about your experiences, so drop a comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.